Thank you for joining us today for the virtual Sunday service with the Center for Creative Living. CCL, a charter of the Universal Church of the Master, has served and supported the spiritual needs of its community here in the Bay Area for over 20 years.
Good morning and welcome. Happy Easter. I hope you're having a great Easter day. You've gone out and looked for Easter eggs. Maybe you've done some prayer work for this most holy of holies, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. However you observe or celebrate today, please do it magnificently. We need celebration. It's been a long, hard time this last year. So celebrate today. Eat some chocolate. Do whatever you do for celebration. There's so many things you can do. And if you want to celebrate spring, do that too. Do all the things you can to celebrate. I'm wearing my Easter bonnet. You notice? Yeah. And I'm all excited about this being Easter. And next Sunday, we're going to be celebrating Ramadan with our wonderful person that we all know and really, really appreciate, and that's Amina. And Amina is going to be here talking about this Muslim, a very, very great holidays. But mainly she's going to be talking about Muhammad. Who was that man? Just like today, our Reverend Mary Garry from the Universal Church of the Master, and she also has her own church, the Center for Infinite Grace Growth, Center for Infinite Growth. But Mary is going to be here, and she is going to be talking about Easter Sunday and how it came about with the Christed one. And it's very interesting. She brings in some of the tales of Passover, like our wonderful Reverend Chris Brown did last week. If you didn't watch last week's service, please do, because we are on this wonderful direction of starting out with Passover, going to Easter, and going to Ramadan. The three great religions on the planet at this time, and how they begin, and what they're doing, and how you're doing with them. Okay? So now, after we are going to be hearing from Amina, and then we're going to be talking about spring with daffodils and such, with the Reverend Joan Stutz, and she's going to be coming up on the 18th. So lots of things happening. So don't forget to tune in next Sunday. Now, we have today James. Many of you know James Knight, and he has written a song. And this is a song that's just for today, just for our Easter. And it's going to be Peace Lives in My Heart. Peace lives in my heart. How great. And he's going to be playing that for us, and we're delighted to have that. All the other things that are going on in the world, we forget that where peace truly lives is in your heart and my heart. So start having a very peaceful Easter Sunday as we're going to lead into our service with a talk and a prayer from the Reverend Ayleen Augustine. And Dr. Augustine is also the president of the Universal Church of the Master, and that is our parent church. So you're going to hear me talk about the Universal Church of the Master, or our church, which is called the Center for Creative Living, or CCL. Now, I sent out a survey for all of you to look at and sign and give me your information about when you felt it was time to open up our building to have church services. And the majority of you said May. I only had 2 people who responded let's do it in April, but the majority said May. So know that that's what we're going to be working towards, is when the best time is to open up in May, and we'll certainly let everybody know. Now, if you don't feel that we have your email address, please email me at safe.doti, S-A-F-E, Doti, D-O-T-I, at AOL.com, and say, put me on your mailing list, Doti. I want to know what's coming up with CCL. And we will be sure to let you know when we're opening, what kind of classes we're going to be offering. I'm all excited about teaching classes again. So for those of you who've taken some classes about things like how to get in touch with spirit guides, how to get in touch with past lives, how to deal with the psychic phenomena that you know about, we're going to be doing that again. Lots of things coming up. But now I want you to stay tuned for our Reverend Dr. Ayleen, Reverend Mary Garry, James Knight, and then a meditation by our wonderful Reverend Janet Childs, accompanied by videos done for, I'm sure, Easter Sunday with our wonderful Reverend Corry Gott. Isn't that a great lineup? I think it is. Stay tuned.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I want to wish you all a very happy and blessed Easter. I'm Reverend Dr. Ayleen Augustine. I am the Universal Church of the Master President, and I am also very happy to be giving the prayer for this morning. You know, Easter is such a wonderful time, and while we're probably not celebrating it exactly the way we normally would, I mean, I still have fond memories of the Easter egg hunts that would be at CCL, and whether a child or a child at heart, watching people run around and look for eggs and hopefully find that one that has, you know, the bit of coin in it, or I think it was $5 in it. Well, we will get back to that again one day. And in the meantime, we get to gather in this way. We get to share the heart of Easter in a wonderful talk. And Reverend Mary Garry is so tremendously special to me, not just because she's an amazing woman who has worked tirelessly for this church, but she also is one of those honored with the position of president of the church. And often I just am tremendously grateful for the opportunity to tap into her experience, her expertise, and to look at things through the perspective of someone who truly has been there. You know, it's always neat that I get to kind of get a sneak preview of what everyone else is doing, and I must say that you guys are in for a really nice treat in this talk, as we usually are. You know, there's just such amazing speakers who come in, and when we consider the magic and the mystery of Easter and what it means and how it comes forward, it's always so great to be able to hear different perspectives on it, because the Universal Church of the Master is truly universal, and we look at those different perspectives. And it's just so great to just focus on opportunity, on possibility, on rebirth, renewal. So it is with great gratitude that I am here with you today, and it is just in the hope that each and every one of you experience that renewal, that you follow those possibilities, that you look to those dreams and you see how they can possibly come to fruition. And as we consider that, as we consider spring after winter, as we consider renewal, let's all take a nice deep breath in and let it out. And as you do, let anything weighing on your body, your mind, or your spirit to fall into that little imaginary basket next to you, because that's your care basket. And in this place, in this space, and at this time, you don't need to hold on to it. Dear blessed and wonderful Creator, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for our lives. We thank you for everything you give and everything you are. And we thank you for all the gifts of spring, of renewal and rebirth that we are experiencing at this time. Creator, we thank you for being there beside us at each and every moment. And as we come out of the dark of winter and step into the bright light of spring, as we see things blossoming and growing, we know that you're there to help us grow and blossom within ourselves and within our own spirits. Creator, yours is a beautiful garden, and each and every one of us has a place in it. And we thank you for the sunshine. We thank you for the rain that nurtures. We thank you for all things that grow, all of the new life that is springing forth at this time, because it reminds us that everything goes in a cycle, and that no matter how dark a winter it is, you always bring the spring. And that goes for everything in our lives, that no matter how hard a time we're going through, you always see us through it into the light again. Creator, we thank you for the blessing of and ask that you please bless all essential workers everywhere. And as we're moving into this next phase of restoration, into this next phase of healing, may we all be able to heal within ourselves. May we all find you in one another, and may we be gentle with all aspects of both within and surrounding us. Creator, we thank you for all of the abundance in our lives. We thank you for all that we have and all that you give us and all those gifts that we haven't even unwrapped yet. Creator, thank you for being our best friend. Thank you for being the one who understands, for being the one we are 100% safe with. And Creator, whatever it means to you, we wish you a happy Easter and a wonderful day. For all your creation to the next 7 generations and beyond, Ahomatak Oyasin, Ago, 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 by earth, sea, and sky, Namaste, Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, blessed be, and Amen.
Like a river traveling through the woods, you let your blessings flow. A line of bunnies hopping through the hills is the gentleness of your love. When I fail and feel like a fool, you are there to help me rise. And with angels near, full of great news of your unfailing love for all. God, you are glorious. God, you are marvelous. You create the world full of love. You show us forgiveness. You give us hope. I am grateful eternally. Peace lives in my heart. Like a river traveling through the woods, you let your blessings flow. A line of bunnies hopping through the hills is the gentleness of yours. When I fail and feel like a fool, you are there to help me rise. And with angels near, full of great news of your unfailing love for all. God, you are glorious. God, you are marvelous. You create the world full of love. You show us forgiveness. You give us hope. I am grateful eternally. lives in my heart. Peace lives in my heart.
Hi there. I'm so excited to be here for Easter. And before I move into the full Easter service, I wanted you to notice my stole. Thank you, Sandy Payne. I said, I'm doing the Easter talk this year, and I'm so excited, but I was hoping I could have a new stole. She said, I can make that happen. And she made it happen. And she hadn't even heard the talk, which is going to talk a bit about the pagans and how they celebrated spring. But here's my stole, full of the flowers of springtime. And even more important, full of the bunnies. You see those bunnies on my stole? Bunnies were part of their celebration, not because they were chocolate. That's because we like those chocolate seeds bunnies. But in those days, bunnies were fertile, and fertility, particularly among domesticated animals, was a key to their survival. So they loved that. And they had eggs, and they weren't chocolate either, and they weren't even colored. They were there because they were a symbol of new life, of life continuing, of the ability to go forward. So let's go forward into that talk. Please stay with me. Good morning, and happy Easter. I'm very excited to be doing the Easter talk this year again. But this year, I have an add-on to the Easter talk. I feel like, I'm a people person. Some of you know me, and I just said, I can't do this talk without somebody there. So Dottie said, all right, I'll come. And of course, Corky's here to record it. But I also have my Tom here, and CIG's Vice President and his wife, Mike and Kathy Corliss. So I'm not by myself this time. So if you hear any noises in the background, it's okay. It's okay. They're here to help us. Before Easter, there was spring. As we began to evolve as humanity, we responded to the environment around us. And, we forget sometimes, I think, how much on the edge the early people were. Early people as in newly gathered tribes, families that were expanded. They lived together, but they were on the edge. If they had a tooth abscess, they died. They didn't go to the dentist and have wonderful antibiotics. If they planted at the wrong season in the year, their crops didn't grow very well, and a lot of them died from hunger. So their survival was always at risk. They were on the edge of life for a long time. And part of how they responded to that is that they evolved a connection with the world around them. And following that connection, if you're going to plant, they weren't stupid. They just had to learn from one another and from their own life experiences. There was no language, there was no writing, there was no farmer's almanac to run to see when you should put the crops in. You just had to kind of figure it out. And if you were in tune with nature, you realized that spring is when everything burst forth. So spring is when you plant it. And then sometimes you'd have a good year and a bad year. So you'd think, oh boy, I wish there was somebody that could help me. Maybe one of the spirits could help me. I'll be a spirit god. And so we call them pagans now, sometimes even with our nose wrinkled up. That's not right. They're fine people. They were fine people then. They're fine people now. They're peoples who connect with the world that God gave us to live in, which we're supposed to be taken care of, to become better people. So they had that connection. And as they grew and as the tribes got bigger, sometimes they move around, so they run into new people. And they say, oh, those gods are good. And then maybe they'd make a new god for the two of them. And so what happened is the world, I'm presuming now, nobody had a chat with me on this, but I'm presuming that the I call him the big God, the highest God, looked down and said, we're getting a little askew here. We're missing my goal. And my goal was to have people understand and connect, because, that life down there is not just to be lived, it's to be purposeful. So he said, well, let me look around the crowd. So he looked around the crowd and he picked Abraham. And he developed a connection with Abraham. And it was the beginning of Jewish monotheism. Monotheism means there's one God, there's a big God. Now, I personally don't think the big God was very upset by people talking to the little God. That's what I call them. But people of different religions, and when their focus was on one God, then the Jewish people became very centered on that and were disapproving of all the other gods. And so there was some antipathy between the Jewish people and the pagans. The Jewish people were quite articulate, quite happy to point out to them that they were perhaps on the wrong road. And nobody I know likes that much. At least I never liked it much. Ask Tom. And so what happened is they became a little separate. And they developed their own hierarchy also. At the time, they developed Pharisees and Sadducees. What happened is Abraham's people wandered into Jerusalem. They didn't wander, they worked there. They got all down there, and they created a beautiful temple there. And the temple was a focus of their worship at that time. And the Sadducees were, to be a Sadducee, you had to be wealthy, well-established, and fairly well-educated. And their job was to take care of the temple. So they funded the temple by selling animals for sacrifice, because to cleanse your soul and start over, you had to make a sacrifice, and you were allowed to use an animal that cost you from the Sadducees. Pharisees were different. The Pharisees were what I called the super rabbis. They were the ones that lived among the people, understood the teachings in the books, and guided the people as to how to live a full Jewish life. And they were loved by the people. And I think one of the things that we forget is that Jesus was a Jew. I mean, he was really a Jew. He was born of a Jewish mother, raised by a Jewish father, and had brothers and sisters who were raised in the faith of Judaism. He had apostles who worked with him on his work, followed him around. They were all Jews. When he did his healings, and he raised the from the dead just once, they said, "Oh, what a wonderful rabbi he is! What a great teacher he is! What a wonderful person, demonstrating the love of God in the earth." But he was seen that as a Jew. And in fact, as we move closer to Easter and we move to Passover, came from the Jewish tradition of you think you may remember the story from last year if you were subject to my Easter musings. What happened was that Joseph, the son with the multi-coat, was sold into slavery and was in Egypt. But he was also an interpreter of dreams, and he interpreted the Pharaoh's dream, which kept coming back to him, which was the 7 big cows and the 7 skinny cows, the healthy abundance and the famine. And so he prepared Egypt by the 7 years of abundance, building granaries, putting it all away, being ready. So when the 7 years of famine came, not only did Egypt fare well, but people would come to Egypt because they knew there was food there. And so for a long time, the Jews and the Egyptians lived happily together, and the Jews were allowed to grow and prosper there. But then, as life happens, Joseph died, the Pharaoh died, the people who remembered the story died. Pretty soon what you had in Egypt were Egyptians who weren't quite sure what was happening, and Jews who were pretty wealthy. And the Egyptians thought that they were too wealthy, that they were getting too much of their food, so they put them into slavery. And then we know the story of Moses, who escaped, was raised with Pharaoh's son, then escaped Egypt and was sent back by God to free the people. And so they had the plagues, they had multiple plagues, and they just didn't respond to them. They didn't free the slaves. So God said, I'm really sorry, but okay, this is the big one. They'll respond to this. And so what they did is he said, I'm going to send a plague, a special plague. And that plague will take the firstborn son. You know, if you really want to know the story of Passover, you need to go back to YouTube's last week talk and listen to the wonderful job that Chris Brown did on Passover. But suffice it to say that for me, the Jews put the lamb's blood on their door, and wherever the plague saw the lamb's blood, it passed over that house. Passover, get it? And so then Pharaoh said, okay, I give up, go. And they left, and they went back to Jerusalem. And that's when Jesus was born. They had been back in Jerusalem for a while, and the Romans were in charge of most of the world, actually, by that time. And they certainly were in charge of Jerusalem and what we call Israel. It wasn't called that at the time. And so when Jesus was doing his teaching and traveling around, they continued to go into temple for Passover. All Jews were expected to go to Jerusalem to be at the temple, to buy their sacrifice from the Sadducees, and to be cleared of their sins for the year and move forward. So what happened was, you know, Jesus wasn't altogether happy with how the Sadducees were charging the poor folk, and gave a little shake to their tables, which made them very nervous. The Pharisees were the people who believed that they knew what should be taught to the Jews about Jewish religion, and they were put off by some of the teachings of Jesus that said, you know, just love God and love one another. If you can do that, you can get through it. And so both the Pharisees and the Sadducees believed that Jesus needed to be stopped. So we know that story. They repeatedly went to Pilate. Ultimately, Jesus, well, no, I got ahead of myself. Forgive me. Jesus and the apostles were at the Passover meal. And then Jesus excused himself, and he went to Gethsemane, and he prayed, and he wept. And he said, God, I don't know if I can do this. This is a really big thing. We have to do this, God. Is there a different way we could do it? Could you just kind of pull this one off the table, and we'll do it a little differently? God said, no, I trust you. You can do this. So he went forward to his destiny. And what a destiny he had. He was scourged. He was crowned with thorns. He was crucified. He died. We know he died. A soldier, a Roman soldier who was in charge of being sure they all died, ran his sword into the side of Jesus, and the water and the blood came out separately. And then Jesus was entombed. And then the next day, when they went back to oil the body, when the women followers, he had many women followers, many, he wasn't there. We know he had resurrected. He had resurrected. He went back, saw the disciples. They saw him. They touched him. They had to be careful. His body was not as fully formed, as dense as ours are, but they knew that he was back. He had resurrected his body. But nobody thought he was a god. They said, Jesus is back, and he is resurrected. Isn't that wonderful? He must be a prophet. He must be one of these wonderful people. So how did we get from Jesus? How did we forget that he wept at Gethsemane? Now, a God who came in for a job just does his job. He doesn't lay on the ground and weep and say, I don't think I can do this. Excuse me. No, Jesus had to call out to be strengthened by God to be able to do it. So how did he get to be a God? And how do we get to have the three, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost? How did all that start to happen? Well, if you remember, the world was full of Jews. This world that we're talking about, where we're interfacing right now, is full of Jews and pagans. Pagans had a lot of gods. So one of the things that I had forgotten is the first person to record and to proselytize for Jesus was Paul. The apostles weren't as educated as Paul. Paul was he Hellenistic, trained in Greece, trained with Greek teachings, Hellenistic teacher. So he was very articulate, and he traveled around from country to country and sent letters back. Those were the first writings about Jesus and guidance for living in Christianity. And remember, God said, love God, love one another, behave accordingly. Paul, many of the apostles who encouraged people to follow Jesus' teachings, encouraged them sometimes to convert to Judaism, sometimes not, but sometimes they encouraged them to convert to Judaism. Remember, Judaism has one God. But Paul worked among the Gentiles, among the pagans, among people to whom the concept that Jesus might have been a God was not so terribly alien. We don't have time on, you probably don't have energy for the hierarchy that is developed that talks about, this is me, a human, this is me, a not so hot human, this is me, a human who's doing better, and now we're interfacing with the gods, and, all goes up a nice little pyramid. But suffice it to say that the converts to Christianity in those days that were pagans and Gentiles were not resistant to the fact that Jesus might be a God. So what do we care? What do we do with all that? Why do I think it's important that we talk about that on Easter? Because I think that what's really important here, not only do we need to love God and love each other, we need to remember why we're here. We're here because this is where we're supposed to grow. And growing, folks, is not easy. Growing doesn't always mean tiptoeing down a happy road. One of the things is that at this time we thrive in a world of dualities and changes, and it's how we it's how we choose to approach that makes all the difference. I'm old. I'm 80 now. I kind of like saying that. I'm 80 now. And I have learned, believe you me, they say, you either walk smoothly down the path of life or you trip and you fall in the dust. I've brushed more dust out of my eyebrows and coughed it out of my nose and mouth. And, I'm one that plunges into things and has done a lot of falling and a lot of getting up. And one of the things that I've learned in just in the last part of my 80 years is not to try and decide, why did that happen? Why did it happen? Who knows why it happened? A twist of fate, an evil person, somebody who loves you but made a mistake. 1,000 reasons could be why it happens. What you need to do, what I need to do, is I need to say, what can I learn from what just happened? And let go of trying to judge or manipulate why it happened. So it's brush the dust off and carry on. This is how we learn. And as humans, we are spiritual beings experiencing a physical world in all of its complexities, contrasts, and beauty. Just remember that, because no matter how spiritual you are, you have changes. I can remember reading about the Buddha who, when he did healing, would take on the illness of the other person and suffer those things because he thought it would clear the other person faster. So here is the Buddha, who is probably one of the more evolved people, but he still has all these challenges. I think what we want to do is to look how we can evolve together, how we can, I have a relative whom I love. I really love that relative, and that relative is just about as far right as I'm far left. It's just about as racially insensitive as I like to think I'm racially sensitive. I thought I can either be mad at him because he's different, or I can say I don't understand why he's different, but boy, I still love him. He's still somebody I love. And that love doesn't have to be contingent upon his measuring up to my fine behavior. So I think one of the things we need to remember is that for spiritual growth is really the point of our being here. That's why we're here. God didn't send us here because he said, oh, somebody needs to fill that planet. I'll just put people there. I don't think so. I said that we're there to learn, to grow, because there's probably, I don't know this, but there's probably some kind of a hierarchy on the other side. And the more you learn on this side, the easier you go in on the other side. And I think that's something we just really need to hold on to, is that our job, you wouldn't be watching this talk if you didn't believe that there was something else. And you wouldn't be likely to think there was something else if you didn't think it was better, right? So we've agreed that there's something else and that it's probably better and that we have things to overcome. And so I think what we want to do is to see what we can do to manifest in the higher form. And boy, were we lucky to have somebody that we know so much about manifest in the higher form. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. 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 Christ is risen. Hallelujah. Christ is risen. Christ is Lord. Sorry, Janet. I snuck a twist in there. Sorry. Thank you for being with us. We love you. We look forward to the time we can be together in body in the CCL's chapel, and we'll be singing together. Thank you, and have a wonderful.
In these deep and troubling times, your gift of light forever shines. There sometimes is no what or how. It is simply the action we take now. It is simply the action we take now. With one step forward and one breath in, sacred circle again. We turn toward you with open hearts. Your humble giving is always a part of our memory, strong and true, of our embracing all of you, all of you, all of you. All of you. With one step forward and one breath in, we dance the sacred spiral again, again. Resurrection in the mist of morning sunrise and the loosening fist turns into an open hand, the giving river across the land. With one step forward and one breath in, we dance the sacred spiral once again. This is all we have to say. Your aching heart will lead the way. In eventide, the waters flow. We will gather, we will grow. We will gather, we will grow. We will grow.
Thank you for joining us for this celebration of faith and fellowship. We'll be back next Sunday, and for those of you, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave them in the comments section. If you appreciate this video and the work that the Center for Creative Living is doing, please press like on the video. You can share the video, and also please subscribe, because that will help this community and the church grow. Remember, in these difficult and challenging times, the opportunity to give and support an organization that has done so much for the community is tremendously important. Please help the Center for Creative Living continue in the wonderful work that it does. We will make it through this. We will be stronger for it. Our faith will carry us. Be blessed, be safe, and have a wonderful week.